September 30th, 2025, 10:14 a.m. Marine Corps Base Quantico, Virginia. Inside the auditorium, nearly 800 senior military officers sit shoulder to shoulder. Generals, admirals, the architects of modern American warfare. Dress uniforms pressed sharp, ribbons aligned. The air conditioning strains against the heat of bodies and expectation. The mood is rigid, focused. At the podium stands the President of the United States. He isn't talking about budgets. He isn't talking about logistics or supply chains. He's talking about steel. "It's something we're actually considering," he says, leaning toward the microphone. "The concept of a battleship. Thick sides. Solid steel. Not aluminum." For the last 4 decades, the U.S. Navy has built its future around speed, stealth, and sensors. Ships designed to see first, strike first, and avoid being hit at all. Floating networks of radar, software, and precision weapons. Digital dominance over brute force. And now, the President is proposing a pivot. A hard turn backward toward armor. "I look at those ships," he continues, referencing the Iowa-class giants of World War II. "They came with destroyers alongside them. And man, nothing was going to stop them." To a civilian watching from home, it sounds like nostalgia. A longing for gray steel and black and white newsreels. A return to an age that feels simpler and more decisive. But inside the Pentagon, and across the Pacific, in Chinese naval planning rooms, this isn't nostalgia. It's a warning. Because if that order ever comes down, if the Navy is forced to abandon them, 10-kin destroyer philosophy in favor of 20,000-ton steel behemoths, everything changes. Shipyards, budgets, tactics, timelines, even the nature of a future Pacific War. The real question isn't whether battleships can be brought back. It's whether they would survive. To understand why this proposal carries so much weight, you have to understand the metal at the center of it. Aluminum. For the past 40 years, modern warships have relied on aluminum alloys in their upper structures. Lighter weight means higher speed, better fuel efficiency, and the ability to carry massive radar arrays without becoming dangerously top-heavy. It's why ships like the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer can mount skyscraper-sized sensors and still survive heavy seas. But aluminum carries a ghost the Navy has never forgotten. November 22, 1975. The Mediterranean Sea. The USS Belknap collides with the aircraft carrier USS John F. Kennedy. Fire breaks out. And the Belknap's aluminum superstructure doesn't just burn, it loses strength. It softens. It melts. The upper deck collapses inward like wax under a flame. 7 sailors are killed. The cruiser is effectively destroyed. That image, of a warship turning into a candle, is burned into naval memory. And it fuels the steel versus aluminum debate to this day. What the President is tapping into is a fear that has been quietly growing for years. That in a modern missile war, America's high-tech ships are glass cannons. Fast, lethal, but unable to take a hit. The Golden Fleet concept now being whispered about in Washington isn't about reactivating the USS New Jersey or USS Wisconsin. Those ships are relics. Their engines are exhausted. Their parts belong in museums. This is something else entirely. A 21st century battleship. Not a museum piece. Not nostalgia. A new kind of armored warship designed for an era of hypersonic missiles and saturation attacks. Imagine a hull weighing over 20,000. The proposed ship would be twice the size of a modern destroyer. 6 inches of solid steel armor. Nuclear propulsion. No powder-fired guns. Instead, hundreds of vertical missile cells paired with high-power rail guns. This wouldn't be a ship designed to hide. It would be a ship designed to brawl. But here's the problem. The Navy isn't asking for battleships. For more than a decade, Pentagon planning has revolved around one concept: distributed maritime operations. The logic is brutally simple and entirely mathematical. Concentrate too much firepower on one massive, expensive platform, and you create a single, catastrophic point of failure. One lucky hypersonic missile from China, and suddenly you've lost 2,000 sailors and $10 billion in hardware in a matter of seconds. So the Navy wants the opposite. Instead of Leviathans, it wants a mosquito fleet: small, numerous, expendable, unmanned surface vessels, and cheap frigates that cost a fraction of a destroyer. If one gets sunk, it's a data point, not a national tragedy. The current shipbuilding plan reflects this philosophy. Lots of smaller hulls, autonomous platforms, and systems that are hard to find and easy to replace. Trump's proposal flips that logic on its head. His argument is that a mosquito fleet lacks presence. A drone boat doesn't project power. It doesn't intimidate. It doesn't cast a shadow off the coast of a hostile state. A battleship does. History supports that intuition. When the USS Missouri sailed into the Persian Gulf in 1991, Iraqi forces reportedly surrendered to its reconnaissance drones, simply because they knew what followed. The sound of a 16-inch shell tearing through the air wasn't just firepower. It was psychological warfare. The claim is that the U.S. Navy traded fear for efficiency. It built missile trucks that are lethal, but not terrifying. And in geopolitics, fear is often half the battle. So let's play the scenario forward. The order is signed. The Golden Fleet project begins. What follows isn't strategy. It's engineering reality. First, the armor. 6 inches of hardened steel means extraordinary weight. U.S. shipyards haven't poured battleship-grade armor belts since 1945. The specialized foundries barely exist anymore. Before a single keel could be laid, America would have to rebuild the industrial base that once supported World War II-era naval construction. Second, the power. A modern battleship wouldn't burn fuel oil. It would need nuclear reactors to generate the electricity required for railguns and directed energy weapons. Lasers would defend against incoming missiles, while railguns fired projectiles at Mach 7. But putting nuclear reactors into a ship that's meant to absorb enemy fire is a dangerous gamble. A hit near the reactor compartment isn't just a military loss. It's an environmental catastrophe. Third, and most critically, the crew. This is the number that keeps admirals awake at night. An Iowa-class battleship required 1,800 sailors. A modern Arleigh Burke destroyer needs about. A ship like that wouldn't sink because it took one fatal hit. It would sink because there wouldn't be enough sailors left to stop the flooding. Then, there's the China factor. The Chinese Navy is building warships at a pace the United States hasn't matched since World War II. Type 055 destroyers, 13,000-ton surface combatants that function more like cruisers, are rolling out of Chinese shipyards in steady succession. On paper, they are among the most powerful surface warships afloat today. Trump's argument is that America is losing the weight war. While the U.S. builds fewer, lighter ships optimized for sensors and networks, China is producing larger, heavier hulls in overwhelming numbers. But that argument runs headlong into China's actual strategy. Beijing doesn't plan to fight the U.S. Navy ship-to-ship on the open ocean. Its entire doctrine is built around denial, keeping American forces as far from its coast as possible. Along the mainland sits a dense fortress of anti-ship missiles designed specifically to kill large, slow, high-value targets. That's why critics say building a battleship in 2025 is like bringing a knight in full-plate armor to a gunfight. At hypersonic speeds, Mach 8, Mach 10, the physics don't care how thick your steel is. The kinetic energy alone can shatter or melt armor on impact. Passive defense becomes irrelevant. This reality is why the Navy shifted decades ago toward active defense. Instead of absorbing hits, you intercept the missile before it reaches the ship. You kill the threat in the air, not on the hull. But here's where the counterargument, now gaining traction inside the White House, comes into focus: cost. Today, if an adversary launches a $20,000 drone at a U.S. destroyer, the response is often a $2 million interceptor missile. It's a terrible exchange rate. We're trading Ferraris for Toyotas, and doing it repeatedly. A battleship changes that math. Guns and railguns flip the economics of defense back in our favor. A conventional shell costs almost nothing compared to a missile. A railgun round might cost $25,000, not $2 million. If a heavily armored ship can sit forward, absorb damage, and return fire with cheap, high-velocity projectiles, it forces the enemy into a losing financial spiral. They burn through expensive missiles. We respond with comparatively inexpensive firepower. In that role, the battleship isn't replacing aircraft carriers. It's shielding them. It becomes the anvil that draws fire, allowing the fragile, irreplaceable carriers to operate farther back, protected by distance and time. So what does this mean for the future of the fleet? We're watching a collision between two visions of naval warfare. One believes the future belongs to networks, speed, and dispersion, small platforms, unmanned systems, and layered defenses that avoid taking hits altogether. The other argues that war still rewards mass, intimidation, and endurance, a ship that can be seen, targeted, hit, and still keep fighting. And the United States Navy may soon be forced to decide which vision it's willing to bet the next war on. Two philosophies now sit on opposite sides of the Navy's future. One is the technocrat's Navy, stealthy, networked, unmanned, sharp, efficient, and fragile by design. A force built to see first, shoot first, and never get hit. The other is the populist Navy, massive, visible, armored. A blunt instrument built to absorb punishment and keep fighting anyway. The Golden Fleet proposal hints at a dangerous middle ground. Imagine a hull the size of a battleship, but instead of big guns, it carries 500 missile cells. An arsenal ship that never needs to close the distance. It sits 500 miles offshore and unleashes a volume of fire so overwhelming that enemy defenses simply collapse under the math. It has steel armor thick enough to survive a missile that slips through. It has nuclear power to feed high-energy lasers. Shield and sword in one hull. On paper, it's terrifying. In reality, building it would require something the United States hasn't summoned in nearly 80 years: national will. It would mean admitting that 3 decades of naval design, lighter ships, aluminum superstructures, efficiency prioritized over survivability, may have been a mistake. And the Pentagon does not like admitting mistakes. September 30th may have sounded like just a speech, but in defense circles, when the Commander-in-Chief speaks, engineers listen. Design teams are likely already dusting off old studies. Analysts are running simulations. Someone, somewhere, is calculating what happens when you weld 6 inches of steel onto a nuclear-powered hull. And across the fleet, the debate is heating up. Younger officers want drones, swarms, and autonomy. They trust networks and algorithms. Older sailors want steel, metal that doesn't melt, bulk that doesn't disappear in one hit. Because when the radar is jammed, when satellites go dark, when the missiles run dry, naval warfare returns to its oldest truth. 2 holes in the water. One floats, one sinks.